Welcome back to the Amino Biohacks podcast. Today we are joined by a special guest. We are joined by Luke Cuff-Burnett, and he is a PE teacher. And basically, we're going to be delving into what does it take to really optimize strength conditioning for school kids or school children. And we're going to look at it from a few different angles, a few different points of view for parents and maybe for the kids themselves. So, Luke, I really appreciate you coming on, mate.
Absolute pleasure. Nice to meet you. Nice to make your acquaintance.
Yeah, no, that's great. We were just having a bit of a chin wag off air, but do you want to give anybody who's listening just a quick 5-minute rundown of how you got to where you are today, and then we'll maybe delve into some of your philosophies?
Yeah, sure. If I had to put a summary on it, I actually came into teaching through the untraditional route. I was a personal trainer with Fitness First in Bath for 2-3 years during university. Quickly left and decided I wanted to influence more people, not just the people who pay for it in a gym. So I emailed a school back in London where I'm from, and they very kindly sort of chanced their arm and said, "You seem semi-decent through an interview process. Here's a job." And I was a bit of a balls, bibs and cone, bottom of the ladder person for the first 12 months. And then they said, "You're not completely incompetent." They kept me on, and 10 years on, I'm still here. And so, yeah, I would probably define my role as head of S&C, head up the athletics, having coached at clubs like Harlequins, Richmond, Rosslyn Park, football at Met Police. I also have a strong playing and coaching on the side of that. So that's probably how I'd sum it up.
Fantastic. That was nice and succinct. And were you in Bath because of university? Did you go to uni there?
Yeah, so I went to Bath College to go. So it's a foundation degree at Bath University, but through Bath College. It was something really generic like sports, health, and exercise science with nutrition. It was a bit of a long-winded foundation degree, but actually a year into it, decided I prefer the working world. I prefer earning money, influencing people, not living a student life. So after a year, I decided to join Fitness First, go from the reception guy doing 30-hour weeks, trying to turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger, to actually taking it a bit more seriously, qualifying in personal training around the age of sort of 19, 20, live that life. I'm sure you know lots about that. I lived that life of, personal trainer, walking the gym floor in a tight polo shirt and the small shorts. But around about 21, 22, I just realized actually I'm influencing 3 to 5 people a day. Positively, it's great, but I wanted to go into schools because at the time I played a decent level of sevens and thought actually I could influence more people, more days and weeks and months that go by. So they luckily, I literally just sent an email out of the blue and they said yes. So I traveled back to Southwest London.
And was rugby's obviously been your main sport all the way through, is it?
Up until 13, 14, yeah, my school, I went to Emmanuel in Clapham, Battersea, and they actually binned football. They scrapped football from the curriculum. So I was multi-sport up to sort of 14, 15, athletics, football, rugby. They chopped football from the curriculum. Athletics stops anyway, unless you're really good. And I was definitely not really good. So that stops naturally. And then rugby continued from 15 onwards. And I found myself in Las Vegas playing sevens for a team back in the day called Kamikaze, just randomly roped up by my brother. At the age of 20, rabbit in the headlights, Las Vegas sevens, it was amazing. But I think from 20, probably 3-4 onwards, with various shoulder operations and stuff, the career started to decline somewhat from there onwards. But yeah, rugby probably the majority. Yeah.
Okay, great. We had Mike McFarlane on the other week. I don't know if you saw that one. He was playing at Rosslyn Park for a while, but our whole conversation was how can you stay healthy in the modern game of rugby is basically
good question.
So let's delve into a little bit into sort of your development as a teacher and as a coach, and obviously so you work with physical education. What's been your main transition in philosophy, I guess, from going, you said about balls and bibs, what was the main transition of you from when you first started to where you are now, maybe in terms of looking at yourself reflectively?
It's a very good question. I would probably just say, and I would have answered this question differently 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
I think having may I say so myself, having the maturity, approaching your 32nd birthday, I think that's okay to say, having the maturity to look back and think, in a short answer, having coached at loads of different football clubs, rugby clubs, listened to some really top end coaches, visited some top end sports clubs, but also the everyday person. You're surrounded by the volunteer mum and dad. You're coaching young boys and girls who are, you know, the definition of grassroots, but you're listening to coaches at the top of their game. To answer the question, coaches, teachers who hit 32, 34, 36, they start to build their own philosophy. As you know, you've been coached by Marvin Rowe and Jonas and stuff. It's all good and well listening to the top end stuff. It doesn't apply to everyday school stuff. At the same time as taking a school approach where it's all fun, a bit of a house party, not too much emphasis on performance, that approach doesn't work at top end of performance. So after 10, 11 years of all those things put together, I think I'm now able to come up with my own philosophy and delivery on coaching, which is quite empowering because you realize at 31, 32, I'm at the start of my journey. Whereas it's funny at 25, 26, you think you've nailed life, right?
I think it's a really good answer. And I think obviously there's this, and I've spoken about this with a few people, actually came up in Marvin's conversation, this idea of like knowledge and application of, and I guess when you talk about wisdom and maturity, I guess you want to we want to aim for the ideals, right? We want to aim for the optimal, but in the trenches day to day with the grassroots, it's not applicable. And I guess maybe one of the things, and you'll be able to delve into this and you'll know more than I do, but it's that idea that you're trying to apply maybe one or two things that the athletes at the lower level can take away. And I guess I shouldn't say lower level, I should maybe say at the younger level, because I guess it's things that you're trying to instill in them early so that then those habits, and we spoke about processes offline before, but this idea that those habits and processes then kind of ingrained at the start, would you say?
Very much so. And that has been a big, how can I describe that? It's been a big switch in approach, a change in approach in the last, I'd probably say quite recently, 4 or 5 years, to going very much player-led. And that's an interesting concept when you bring the approach of player-led teaching and coaching with not only top-end coaches, but also more traditional teachers who teach in schools day-to-day with school children who may be, I don't want to put people in boxes here, but arguably 40 plus, maybe sort of 38, 40 plus years old, who go with the traditional route of education.
Like a different mindset.
To them, different mindset entirely. They think they, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, in the science department, the PE department, whatever it may be, have all the knowledge, all the power. It's the old chalk and talk approach. Listen to me, I know all the answers, do what you're told. Yeah. Whereas the player-led approach is teachers and coaches, no matter what level to some degree, sitting back, letting go of control, drop your ego and give players the decision-making power. And all we do as teachers, coaches, backroom staff, whatever that may be, is we guide the mistake making and guide the success so that they learn earlier. So to answer your question, lower down the school, currently we have, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds deciding how they're going to learn and what the progressions and regressions are. All we do is we jump in on things like safety. Misbehavior, and if it's going completely wrong 5, 6 times, we'll rein it back in and guide it. But I think it's a different approach, and it's so powerful if done well. So does that answer the question, or does that?
Yeah, not really? No, definitely. It's a really good, and it kind of leads me on to this next point, this idea of like learning via discovery, I guess, and I guess learning via discovery rather than learning from, say, just a textbook kind of, this is how it's going to be done. I guess that there's this idea that, and I've talked about this on some of the other podcasts, this idea of failure leading to success and actually preparing athletes for failure, and actually failure being like the obstacle is the way, right? The saying, obstacle is the way, and actually you have to fail more to learn more to become this output or whatever it is that Jonas or any of these other guys are working with at a later date, I guess. And I think that what you're doing there is actually, it's really interesting. It's obviously like it's like the modern way of helping people or helping young athletes figure out how it's going to actually work in the real world, maybe.
Exactly. And I think that's part of it is curating, curating maybe students, well, whether it's, coaching at a club or private school or state school. I think it's just trying to create an environment where teenagers, so young children turning into teenagers, turning into young adults, are able to solve problems, whether it's on their own or in a group of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. They can solve problems, and it's okay to be in what's to patent, hopefully not plagiarize, but to patent the method behind it. It's called the learning pit, and it's not new information. Disclaimer: I'm not claiming that as my own information.
Yeah,
it's
no,
just a
definitely.
generic thing.
What is it? So what's
and I'm sure you've probably heard about.
No, I haven't actually heard of it. I haven't actually heard of it. What is the learning pit?
To answer it succinctly, imagine there are two surfaces here and their level. In between two surfaces, so beginner and advanced, for example, in the middle is a pit, and we, teachers, coaches, whatever you want to call us, instructors, leaders, we try and put athletes, players, children into the depth of the learning pit. So if you or we, anybody, just Googles it and spends 5 minutes, 10 minutes looking into it, I think the images which portray the theory are more powerful than the words. The words can get very
definitely
nonsensy and get a bit sort of word county.
Wishy-washy.
Wishy-washy, yeah, just a bit inaccurate. And I think if you just have the image in your head of, beginner and then advanced, or at least intermediate, or stage to stage and another one, in between stages, there's a pit. But the difference, I think, sometimes with educators, teachers, coaches, is we are not willing to put players, athletes into that pit because of either an ego complex, control over that, job justification. It's obviously quite tough at the top end. If you can imagine Bristol, Exeter, teams like that, and the head coach, to sit back as a head coach of a top end sports club, even, go to football, Chelsea, Man U, Liverpool, I would say Tottenham, but anyway, for them to sit back and say, with tens of millions of pounds at stake, to put the player, the child, the athlete into the pit and say, well, you're in the pit, you need to climb your way out. And that's essentially what putting them in the pits that looks like as an everyday practice. We say to ourselves as teachers, who are you going to put in the pit today? If not yourself. And that's going through a learning experience. And the powerful thing is the child getting themselves out of the pit, not the supposed expert throwing them a rope and pulling them out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes 100% sense. And actually, it's really powerful analogy about helping individuals make better choices for themselves. And I guess actually, I liked your examples there, because I guess what it boils down to, and this is my limited understanding of it, is that it boils down to development, and I guess development or outcome. And I guess when you're Tottenham or you're whoever, any of the teams you mentioned, the pit is the Premiership or the European Cup or whatever, right? Whatever it is that you're working towards. And I guess there's a community there of people who are at the top of the game, they're at the top of the hierarchy, they're the pinnacle of their performance, and their pit that they're trying to figure their way out of. Obviously, they've got their coach, the manager, and obviously a selection of players, and they're trying to basically solve that problem. But I guess on that route there, everybody else, there's obviously a big collection of people at the bottom. I guess it's like when you're trying to develop those athletes and you're trying to improve, and the focus should be on improvement, not the outcome. Because I think, like you said there, that some people can be too focused on the outcome from an early stage. And I think exactly what your point is, and I think it's a really good point, and it's important to highlight, is that this should be focused, like when you're developing young athletes, the focus should be on development and improvement. And actually, yes, sometimes it is a case of you may have to be 2 steps back, 3 steps forward type of thing. It's like they may have to lose before they can win type of thing. And I guess what you're doing is you're empowering them to make those better decisions and giving them the tools to be able to fix themselves type of thing, I guess.
Completely. Yeah, exactly. And I just think it is proven scientifically, as well as the everyday person proving it because they've done it, that if a person goes through a problem themselves, and finds a solution themselves. Everyone goes through problems, and it's relative to their environment. If a problem is pop into the cafe and they haven't got any oat milk for your flat white in the morning, that's a problem. It's a very, very small problem, but it's a problem. Comparing all the way through to a row that Dele Alli and Harry Kane have in a dressing room after a game they've lost, that's a problem. But it's being able to let the people within the problem solve it, and not moan, because if they come out of it through resolve and persistence, and they solve it themselves, they're much stronger off the back of it. Anyone can give them the answer. You tell a child, a 6-year-old girl or boy, what's 6 times 6, they can't get it. The obvious thing to do as a parent or a teacher is to jump in. It's 36. Come on, be sharper, because it's confirmation bias. You're confirming your own knowledge, your own ego, your own power. But actually, it's more powerful to help them, guide them, a longer process,
Definitely,
but a more powerful one. Sure.
Definitely. I think, again, this is a really, really important point, is that having the tools to be able to problem solve, and this all boils back to, like we were saying before we came on, and I harp on about this a lot on the podcast, this idea of mindset, lifestyle, and nutrition, and that your mindset sets everything else up. Like before getting out on the training paddock and wanting to do your sprints or your conditioning or being in the gym or whatever, or with your nutrition protocol that you're going to put in place, it all comes down to your mindset and the way you think about the problem first, and how you set up that framework. And I guess this is exactly what you're doing, being the coach that you are and working the space that you are now. You're actually coming up with theories around pedagogy and theories around teaching and learning, which are actually creating frameworks for people to improve themselves, which is obviously, like, rather than solving the problem for them, which is obviously the analogies that you just given, it's you're giving them the tools. And that's where true power lies, is obviously where you're giving them the tools to figure it out for themselves. Really, really, really important points there. But no, thank you for breaking that down. I like the pit. I'm going to definitely check that out as well afterwards.
You're good.
So you've got so we've kind of talked a little bit about your I guess that's your philosophy, really, isn't it? Some of your philosophy that you currently use with obviously the kids that you work with, and you said you work on outside of school time as well, with some clubs. What how does that break down? What's the difference between like clubs and school kind of stuff?
So I'm employed full time at the school as a PE teacher. So I'll spend, like I say, 50-hour, 60-hour weeks there, and then in the evenings and on weekends, I'll go and do just freelance stuff. And then actually started when I was much younger. Justifiably, it starts as free work, it starts as volunteering, because obviously at the age of 22, 23, you want to get your foot in the door and just learn. And, you're down in money, you're down in effort, you're down in petrol, driving to these games that you're part of coaching. But some of the experiences that I've been able to have, I'm very fortunate, have really helped shape me. And it's very interesting speaking to colleagues who are older than me and other coaches who are 40, 45, who just look at you as a sort of 28, 30-year-old and think, yeah, but what do you know? What have you gone through? How many changing rooms have you been sat in? And I was very fortunate. I managed to, a list goes on, really. It all started with Met Police Football Club. So shout out a lot of people, with Donovan Chislett, John Nurse, Stuart Searle, lots of influential people there. Stuart Searle is a guy who's still at Chelsea Ladies. He's their head goalkeeper coach. We went through an FA Youth Cup run when I was about 23, 24. So that was really powerful. Got to sort of, round 5 of the FA Youth Cup, and I was this bright-eyed 23-year-old S&C guy traveling to Yeovil, Barnet, all these sort of pro academy clubs with just these bunch of kids from Met Police in South London. Anyway, that was really cool. And then went from Met Police to, on weeknights, to Rosslyn Park Rugby Club on the weekends. Then it went to Richmond Teenagers on weekends. And then it turned into, all that time was Harlequins as well. So the last 7 or 8 years I've been involved with Harlequins DPP. I don't know if that rings any bells to you, but you probably know, aware of it. It's just a sort of developing player program where it is selective, and then we as coaches coach them, and from there they can either move on or not move on. And if they stay on long enough, they hit the academy. And working with high-end teenagers, you know, every fifth Monday of the year for the last 7 or 8 years really gives you perspective when you go back into a school where it's non-selective. So because you got the best of Surrey and the best of Sussex,
yeah,
and then you go into a school where it's definitely not the best of anything. It's just, it is what you're given, and it's how to make those children feel better about just being themselves. Doesn't matter if you're that level or not. So interesting challenges. It's been a good 4 or 5 different sports clubs, and some really powerful lessons to take back to the PE department as well.
Yeah, definitely amazing. And I guess there's some crossover there, isn't there? The things you learn from the clubs that then you take back into school, and there's things that you learn in school that you then take back to the clubs, I guess. So it's quite a nice, yeah. And so maybe let's go. So obviously I always like to leave this so it's got some sort of tangibility to it. So maybe I normally ask for like 3 kind of rules or 3 areas to focus for potentially athletes or even parents that are listening for their kids. What would be your kind of 3 kind of golden rules? I know obviously we always try and condense, there's millions of rules that we could have, but I always say like power of 3, if we could like condense it down into kind of 3 ideas that you would kind of help you at this current state in your development. Because I guess when you look back on yourself in 5 years time, you'll be like, oh, what was I saying then? If it is anything the same as me, I look back last year and I was like, what was I doing? But yeah, 3 kind of rules that you think would be helpful to guide people in the right direction.
From a parent's point of view, so if I put my parents' hat on, I would say my child's happiness must come before lots of things. Whether that child is 11, whether that child is 18, or anywhere in between, that needs to be the priority, which is hard to see. I was very lucky to be sat in front of a chap called Richard Shorter, who did a sit down with us as Harlequins coaches. Gary Street did the hookup, who had a book out. Can't remember the name, but it's about basically the conversation the parent has with the child on the way home from the sports game. Really, really powerful, because so much of it is, how did you get on? Did you win? And then little Timmy or little Sarah sits there and goes, well, if I have to answer the question directly, no, I didn't win the game. So does that mean I failed? And it's a very interesting concept. So I think I would.
And I guess at that age, sorry, as well, it's like normally teams get trounced, isn't it? If you've lost, you've probably got trounced. It's never like close. It's normally quite one-sided, I guess, as well, isn't it? So.
Oh yeah, under 12 B team football is 9-0 every week. Yeah, that's quite a tough lesson to say. So that was really interesting, learning from an expert. Richard Shorter is an expert in his industry, and I'm just a sports coach. And for him to come in and tell us as coaches to condone that conversation, and if we overhear it, we need to prioritize the child's enjoyment and happiness from the session. Definitely. In our coach plenaries and our post-game wrap-ups, we should also condone that message, because it's under 15 Harlequins doesn't mean it's performance-based. Definitely. The only performance-based stuff, let's be frank, is elite level on TV, you know, European or international sports. So I think we could get some perspective on that, and parents to prioritize their children's happiness would be the first thing.
Definitely. I guess just on that, just before we get into the second one, I guess on some level, I guess the reason why that comes at the top of the hierarchy is because the things that we enjoy will be consistent at, and consistency and application over time will always trump talent, I guess, doesn't it? And it's that idea when you can mix talent and consistency and work ethic together is where the real magic lies. And it's I think it's a really great point, and I think thank you for putting that first, because it is so important. Whatever you enjoy, you will stay consistent at.
Well, exactly. And also, there's nothing wrong with not making the whatever, for example, for my situation, you know, not making it through the DPP in Harlequins and not making the academy. Nothing wrong with that, because it shapes you as a person. You Definitely. Become a 16-year-old or 18-year-old who, okay, you haven't made the academy now or yet, but you are a tougher person off the back of it, and you can go to university with better resolve.
It allows you to become, yeah, definitely. And I think it shaped, like, exactly, I think it's a really great point. It shapes you as a person. It allows you to become who you're going to become at some point in the future. There's lots of very successful people in lots of different domains that probably haven't made it through in their elite sporting dreams at an early age. So yeah, no, that's great. What's the second one? What's the second kind of key tip?
I think if I was to put my generic hat on and not really come from any particular angle, I would probably just say honesty. Sounds quite deep. I don't want to get spiritual.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I won't go full Johnny Wilkinson with it. But it is very much one of the most powerful things that if you apply to many, if not every situation, because if you're honest with yourself and your own ability level, you can improve. If you're honest with yourself, and that's by the way, that's academic or physical. That as a PE teacher, obviously my perspective and my angle is somewhat warped, but it's the same in maths or science, or a college degree. You might be doing a BTEC in, cooking at home. If you're honest with yourself on your own ability level, there's room for improvement. If you think that you're better than you are or worse than you are, you're either deluded. So you're deluded either way. So I think honesty is really, really powerful. Again, with relationship building, I actually had a rant about this about 2 months ago. I think if you're not honest, when building a relationship with someone, if you're not honest, especially with those closer to you, you're actually doing them and yourself a disservice in the long term. Although it's difficult to have the awkward conversation,
yep.
I think it's better for everyone involved if you're able to word your honesty right. And I think that's the gray area which comes with it. Some people take it too far one way and get really abrasive and actually quite confrontational with their honesty. And you think, okay, I appreciate your being honest, but actually you're wording it in a really abrasive way, and I don't like it. You're hurting my feelings. The other end of the spectrum is you're not honest enough. You're too soft. You're a doormat. You're a rollover.
Yep.
So I think it takes some time to hit that happy medium, but honesty
100%.
is huge.
Definitely agree with that. And I think you've made some really great points there, like in terms of there's so many points that we can make there, but like even with communication, it's like the way you deliver what you're saying. It's about even like having disagreements with people. It's about disagreement with respect, but actually 95% of communication is non-verbal. You can say the same thing, I hate you, or I hate you. You can say the same words, but you can say it with completely different tonality and different intention, I guess. And I think, and this is actually linked in nicely with what you were saying earlier, is that these frameworks and the things you're saying now, these are the frameworks that take time. The same as kicking a football or sprinting. These are practices that take time and they build up over time. And number one, you have to be aware of what they are. And then number two, then you obviously have to go away and, like brushing your teeth, do them every day, so that then you become proficient at being able to be honest and have the courage to, I guess, because it boils down to fear a lot of the time, I think, isn't it? Is that people are scared of judgment and scared of fearful of judgment, so that they feel like they can't actually live their honest self, I guess, is what it boils down to. So I think,
well, they just don't want to be seen as the person who's too brutally honest, and it's realizing, well, I need to be honest here, but I just can't be brutal. And like you say, it does take some time. I don't want to shine my own halo here or think I've made it in life, but I think it's a very liberating process to go through. When you hit that point where you're like, I'm now good. I wouldn't say excellent or outstanding, but I think I am good at being honest and just saying what you think, but without being a complete tool about it. So yeah.
100%. I run respect. It's not easy, and I think, yeah, if everybody could even just begin their journey, we never get there, right? But if everyone could just begin their journey, I think it'd be very empowering for individuals. So thank you. That's another really really spot on observation. What was the last one?
If to be more specific to my industry, because I've gone quite wide with the lens there, to narrow the focus a tad, I would say with regards to teaching and S&C and developing physically, I would say mobility over metrics is probably my personal, one of the biggest personal take homes from 8, 10, 12 years of learning from people, but also passing on to the next generation of people. And I know this is probably a bit cliche, but I think that's, firstly, it's a phrase I haven't heard before. So hopefully it's to some degree unique.
Coin it, trademark it. We need a book. There's a trademark it. We need a book.
I need a copyright next. I don't know. I need the little R next to it. I might get t-shirts made up.
I can help you with that part.
Mobility over metrics. Okay, we've got a logo coming. We've got hoodie brands. We've got a merchandise line coming up.
I want 20%.
Call it 10. I'll buy you a coffee. But I think, yeah, it's just one of those things I'd always say to, you know, parents at my school ask it, you know, weeks and days on the sideline of sports matches. Clients regularly ask it doing freelance PT on Wandsworth Common. You know, siblings ask it, family, friends, and I just think you need to understand the process. Like I didn't back in the day, but now I do, and passing it on. Let's move well first. We move well, then we can lift well. And after both those are done, we can lift more kilos and more regularly. But I think before all that, the building blocks are mobility, not metrics. And metrics come in 2 different forms. You can do metrics in terms of kilograms, pounds, and the amount of weight you're lifting, or metrics in terms of, you know, hit, like body weight, do 1,000 burpees in half an hour, and then do your wrist in and you're out for 2 months. Or, oh, look, I did 400 thrusters with 25 kilos in a CrossFit workout. I now am debilitated for 7 days. And I think yeah, every time is just stay mobile, be mobile and stay mobile before getting into the dirty world, the very murky world of metrics, which can get quite confusing.
100%. I think it's a great philosophy. It's a philosophy for longevity. It's a philosophy for again, we talk about consistency, but I guess it's one of those ones. It's like, what's the point in doing 110? Actually, I think it was Jonas or Marvin said this to me. What's the point in doing 110% for 6 months when you can do 90% for the whole year? If you know what I mean. It's one of those ones where it's like,
and fundamentally, especially at their level, at Speedworks' level with their elite athletes, is you don't break. That's, you know, one of the biggest things that on the internship I'm on at the moment with Jonas was listening to the Bristol Bears head of athletic development, I think his title is.
Yeah.
He said one of the biggest, what did he say? One of the attributes or qualities a player can bring to the table is availability. And he paused, and Jonas paused, and it was like, that's a fair point. Because fundamentally, if you're Semi Radrada, your Charles Piertal, your Piers O'Connor, etc., you're the regular starting people, but you're in a physio room, you're no use to anyone. So it's yeah, I think we should prioritize that. Anyway, that's probably a long-winded answer, but I hope that got there.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's really insightful. Look, we're gonna look to wrap up there. If people want to find out more about you, or they want to contact you, if they've got questions, obviously they can leave notes or in the comment section or on YouTube or on Instagram. But what where can people find out more about you?
My website, of all places, now for school reasons, not personal, for school reasons, and the professional contract I have to hold with school, I have to have a closed account on social media. So my Instagram account is private, but Instagram me and we can have a conversation. I'll accept you. But more importantly, my website is my business, basically. It's just called lukecb.com. And it's basically me programming clients for personal training, doing remote PT sessions, coaching children one-to-one, and doing PT sessions with people, which changes their stance on sustainable fitness. So yeah, lukecb.com is probably an easier way to go around it.
100%. Super insightful. I'll leave some links in the comment description and the description section below for people to obviously follow.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Really appreciate you coming on. We'll have to get you back on again at some point. It's been really insightful. Some fantastic insights, mindset. Yeah, we'll have to do this again. I really appreciate your time, mate.
No, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the opportunity and the window. Hopefully I'll speak soon.